Welcome to Ottawa and the future of sports. Today, we're diving into the excitement of the OFSAA 2024 Cross Country Championship, held right here in Ottawa on November 4th at the Terry Fox Athletic Facility. This event brought together high school runners from across Ontario, showcasing incredible talent and sportsmanship in a spirited competition. In today's episode, I'll be speaking with Kirk Dillabaugh to get an inside look at this year's championship. We'll explore everything from the number of participants and schools involved to the benefits of hosting such an event here in Ottawa. Kirk will also share insights on how this championship impacts local athletes and supports the development of cross-country running in our region, as well as the role of the Ottawa Lions Track and Field Club's youth programs in fostering the next generation of athletes. Stay tuned as we unpack these topics and reflect on some of the standout moments from this year's competition.
I have one question to start off the podcast for you is can you provide an overview of the OFSAA 2024 Cross Country Championship held at the Terry Fox Athletic Facility? How many participants and schools were involved this year?
Yeah, so there were about just under 1,700 athletes, 1,696 athletes representing 402 schools from across the province. The province of Ontario, for the provincial high school championships, the province of Ontario is divided into 18 different associations, and each of those associations are permitted through their qualifying meets to send the top two teams from the association championships and the top five individuals that weren't on a qualifying team. So they all come together for the OFSAA championships. OFSAA has been around for 75 years and providing provincial championships for high school sport. There were 7 races over on the Saturday. There was the novice races for grade 9s and athletes born in 2010. The junior races is for athletes born in 9 or 10 that were born in 2009. And then the senior races for anyone born before 2008 or prior. And then we also had a para category. The para category was divided into, there's 3 races in the para race that ran together. Simply because there's not enough numbers yet. We're hoping that it will continue to grow to warrant their own individual races. But there was a visually impaired race, visually impaired athletes, ambulatory athletes, and intellectually disadvantaged athletes as well.
Very, very interesting. Can you tell us a bit more about the ambulatory athletes? Can you explain that one for us?
Yeah, so ambulatory athletes are athletes that have lost a limb or have some form of like cerebral palsy would fall into that as well. So athletes that have something, whether loss of limb or some kind of disease that prevents them from moving regularly. So there's a separate category for them because obviously they're disadvantaged because of that disability.
I see. It's really cool that there's also representation on the para side of sports. That's really interesting. Now, Kirk, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your involvement in this sport? Because you're also a high school teacher, right? At Glebe Collegiate.
Yes, I've been teaching and coaching at Glebe for the past 24 years. I've been convening cross country meets in the city of Ottawa for 23 years, and I've been the convener for the city cross country championships for the last 20 years. It has flopped back and forth, but for the last couple of years, I've been responsible for all the cross country at the high school level in the city, and it's just been great to watch it grow. And we've held the provincial championships here in Ottawa before, and each time we do, it's great to see the excitement that it generates.
At a local level, how popular is the sport amongst Ottawa high school students?
Well, it is growing. There's roughly around 1,000 athletes that participate in cross country at the city championships. Now, there's always more that are entered that for one reason or another don't end up running because of injury or whatnot. But it has been growing every single year, and this year we did see a big boost in our numbers. And I attribute that to us hosting the OFSAA Cross Country Championships this year.
Very interesting. One more follow-up in regards to yourself and the sport. Well, what got you into the sport initially? Because you yourself are obviously a runner as well. What got you into the sport?
Yeah, so growing up, I would call myself a jack of all trades, master of none type of athlete. I enjoyed all sorts of different sports. That's what sort of drove me to becoming a phys ed teacher. Um, People often ask me what I do, and I tell them I'm a professional athlete. And when they ask me
Nice.
what sport I play, I say all of them. Because I do. I get to dabble in everything. When I got to university, however, I had to pick one sport that I really wanted to focus on, and running was one that I had, that I enjoyed. I'd had some success in it, and I thought it was something that I could compete at the next level. I will admit, in my first year of university, I also considered playing basketball and volleyball. I didn't even get a sniff on those teams, but almost right away, I was swept up with cross country running, and it sort of took off from there.
Awesome. And you still run till this day, is that correct?
Yeah, now I run for enjoyment.
Okay.
I haven't raced in a while. I haven't raced for probably 4 or 5 years. But I still like to get out and run. It's enjoyable. It keeps me active, keeps me fit. Um, I've lost sort of that competitive edge um, with my running, but I'm able to fulfill that through my coaching.
Right on. What are the key benefits for Ottawa and its sports community in hosting an event like the OFSAA Cross Country Championship?
Well, there is a small boost. It's not huge. It's not a huge event on the grand scale of things, but there is a small boost for tourism. The first week in November isn't usually a high tourist time in the city. We're sort of in that gray, dull fall era. The trees have lost their leaves. We're just waiting for that first snowfall. The weather can be very unpredictable, but we welcomed over 5,000 visitors when you consider the number of athletes, coaches, and parents that come to participate in the OFSAA Championship.
Nice.
And it's also an opportunity for local athletes to see that provincial level of competition. As the host association, I mentioned earlier, there's 18 associations across the province. As the host association, one of the perks that we get is that we get to have a double cohort of entries. So instead of just having two teams from the city of Ottawa and five individuals, we're permitted to enter four teams and 10 individuals. And some of those athletes are athletes that might never get a chance to participate at this level of competition if it wasn't hosted here in Ottawa. So it exposes athletes to that. And then the other big thing with that is, there was an army of volunteers that were involved in this. I had a wonderful committee that I worked with, and I won't name them all because it would take a awful long time, and I'm deathly afraid I might leave somebody out, and then I'd feel terrible. But we had an army of volunteers, almost 300 volunteers
Wow.
helping out with this event. And so those volunteers that get involved in an event like this, it gives them an opportunity to say, hey, this was a lot of fun. I like being involved in this aspect of putting on events like this. And so it helps, attract officials to the event. It helps people um, be more willing to get out and help with events in their community.
Fascinating. 300 volunteers. How do you do that outreach work for recruitment of volunteers? Is it mainly internal or is there a call out for external people? How does that, if you don't mind me asking, how does that roll out? How does that work?
So it went out in several different ways. I mean, the bulk of our volunteers were high school students. Um, so, the teachers that were involved in coaching cross country, they shared the opportunity with their students. But we are also partnered with the Ottawa Lions Track and Field Club. And the Ottawa Lions Track and Field Club, provided a number of volunteers as well. And then also Run Ottawa um, is uh, is an excellent source of volunteers, and we partnered with them. They actually used our course to host their Frost Country race. So they hosted a race on Sunday morning on the officer course, and they helped us with the setup. They provided, several resources, and then a bunch of volunteers from Run Ottawa helped with the setup and on volunteering on race day. So it was a number of different organizations, the school board, well, all four school boards in the city of Ottawa, the National Capital Secondary School Athletic Association, the Ottawa Lions Track and Field Club, and Run Ottawa, all sort of came together to make this event happen.
Very cool. It seems like there's a lot there's a huge community of runners in the region, right? And organizations and so on. Is Ottawa, in your opinion, like a running, would you say is a cross country and running sort of city? Is that would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think Ottawa is an excellent running city. The numbers of participants, like, head out to the canal just about any time of year. Whether it's the dead of winter or the heat of summer, and you'll see people going for a jog along the canal. There's many wonderful bike paths in the city of Ottawa, along the canal, along the Rideau River, um, even into Gatineau Park, where you'll see people running year round. There is a very vibrant running community in Ottawa. I think Run Ottawa has a lot to do with that in keeping that alive. There are a number of organizations. There's, as I mentioned, as we've talked about, the Ottawa Lions Track and Field Club, but then there's also other groups like Miles to Marathons, Run Ottawa, the Running Room, and a host of other organizations that offer running clubs, many of them free, for just people just to get out and socialize and run and be active, which I think is excellent.
Do these
And it's
organizations, sorry, go ahead.
sorry, and I think for the bulk majority of people, their first opportunity to be exposed to running likely came in elementary school at cross country meets. So it's neat to see it come full circle. They may have run cross country in grades 3, 4, and 5, and then got involved in other sports and sort of grew out of it. But then, as they get older in life and life gets busy and they don't have time to be in sports all the time, they remember, hey, you know what? I'm gonna go for a run, and they get drawn back into the sport that way. So it's really is a sport that you can participate in lifelong, which I think makes it wonderful.
I'm certainly not a runner, but I do remember the meet back in grade 5 or 6 at Mooney's Bay, actually that big hill right beside the
Yep.
lines, the track and field. So I know what you're saying. I totally hear that. Curious to know, do these organizations, do these various running organizations, do they generally collaborate with one another as you're describing? Is there kind of a spirit of collaboration amongst most of them?
Yeah, I think that amongst most of them, I mean, obviously some of them are um, competing for
Right.
resources and competing for members. And, there's been a couple of track and field clubs that start up in Ottawa. But the Ottawa Lions Track and Field Club has just been so big and so successful. Quite often, these smaller groups stay pretty small. But it's nice to have that kind of, even though there's a little bit of rivalry there, most of it's a friendly rivalry. Um, and so there is a little bit of um, that competitive spirit that comes out, which I think is important. But also at times like this, when we're putting on a big event, it's very rare that there wouldn't be camaraderie and people being willing to help each other make their event be successful.
Right on. I'm curious to know, as a coach for this sport, what do you see as far as high school students? What do you look for in these athletes in their early stages of their careers when they're participating in these races? What sort of characteristics and skill sets do coaches like yourself look for?
Well, cross country running, athletics in general in high school is sort of a secondary sport. Most of the athletes that I've coached um, have had another sport that they did first. Basketball, soccer is a big one, even hockey. Kids grow up when you're really young, kids like to play games,
Right.
right? And so with the Ottawa Lions Track Field Club, our younger programs are very, game oriented, a lot of fun little competitions, those kind of things. But make no mistake, kids like sports. They like to play games. They like hockey. They like soccer, and that's understandable. With For me, one of the real important things that I like to see with the athletes that I coach is that they're multi-sport athletes, that they're not, sort of one-dimensional athletes. I think it's really, really important, especially in the younger grades, It gets a little different in grades 11 and 12. But by that point, it's usually the athletes who see that they've got an aptitude for it. I mean, cross country running is hard work.
Mm,
It's not easy to push through the pain, right? And that takes a special kind of athlete to be willing and able to do that. So they may come out in grade 9 and 10 simply because they're good at it, because they have a wonderful aerobic base from, as I mentioned, soccer, swimming, hockey, basketball, whatever other sports they've done. Um, and if they find they love the sport, and they're willing to put in that work, then they can grow. And as in terms of what I look for, I just look for a willingness to work hard.
mm.
If the athlete's willing to work hard at it, I've got all the time in the world for athletes like that. Some of them will go on to compete at the next level in university and beyond, and some of them won't compete much beyond high school. But as long as they have that willingness to work, it's something they can carry on and continue for the rest of their life.
Fascinating. Follow up for you. Is retention generally an issue in this sport for high school students? Like because especially if they're multi-sport, like let's say you enjoy soccer and you enjoy cross country, is there a point where they kind of may have to pick one and commit to it?
Yeah,
I mean, yeah. So how do you, if you don't mind me asking, well, what's the
it
how
all
does one deal
depends.
with that as a
Well, it all
coach?
depends on what their goals are. If they're a very, very good soccer player and they come to us to help us improve, their power, their speed, or their endurance, or whatever the case may be, at some point you've got to pick one. You know,
Right.
it's very difficult to be, a very high level athlete in two different sports beyond high school. But the nice thing about high school is they can continue to do both all the way through there. Um, so at one point in time, as a coach, my goal is to guide them, give them direction, and help them to discover what they really want to do. One of my pet peeves about youth sport is that a lot of youth sport try to sink their hooks into kids at a very young age.
Mm,
Um, and that I won't name any sports because I don't want to get myself into trouble. But they start filling the kids, and particularly the parents, because the parents are the ones that are writing the checks. Um, if your kid wants to play at the next level, they've got to do this, they've got to do this, and they try to get them hooked into year-round programs for that sport. Um, I think it's dangerous. I mean, I understand why clubs do it. Clubs need to generate revenue to survive.
right.
Um, but I think it's dangerous. It hurts the athlete's development. And let's say I am going to pick one here. Let's say you're a soccer player. You start playing soccer at 7 or 8 years old, and you show an aptitude for being, a pretty good athlete. Um, if those soccer coaches hook you into soccer, maybe soccer's not the sport you're the best at. Maybe your best sport is rowing. Maybe your best sport is track and field. But if you only play soccer year round, you'll never develop those skills and attributes. Whereas if we give athletes an opportunity to develop different skills, then they may find out at age 14, 15, you know what? I really like soccer. I'm a really good soccer player, but this sport is a sport that I can go somewhere in. And I was talking with the head coach of the Ottawa Lions Track and Field Club, Richard Johnson, this evening, and he said one of the things he's noticed is that a lot of these athletes come back to track and field later in life.
Mm.
May not be in high school, but in university. They've trained with the club as youth in grades 8, 9, 10, and then they leave to pursue another sport. But then by the time they get to university age or even beyond that, they end up coming back to track and field because it was something they love, and the other sport fizzled out for whatever reason. So it's good to see that. It's good to know that the skills that we teach and help develop in athletes, it's something they can always come back to.
Very interesting. I think that topic that you were just exploring and explaining there is a really interesting one and probably a good one for a follow-up interview down the road because it's I agree with what you're saying and I'm sure a lot of people, parents and others would probably want to hear more about that. Just a few more questions, if you don't mind. I know we're somewhat short on time, but how does hosting this championship impact local athletes and contribute to the development of cross-country running in the region? I think you somewhat answered it in the one of the previous questions, but I'll ask you that again, please.
Yeah, exactly. As I mentioned above, by us hosting this championship, we had a double cohort of entries. So we had twice as many athletes as would normally be permitted to run at an OFSAA championship, run in this event. So it gives athletes an opportunity to compete at a level that they may never have had an opportunity to compete at, and they may not get that opportunity again. But at
Hmm.
least they've got that opportunity this way, and it'll be a memorable experience for them and generate excitement. The number of volunteers that we had participating in this event. Um, the skills they learn about volunteering, the things they learn about themselves in volunteer roles. Um, I mentioned there was about a 15% increase in the athletes that participated in high school uh, cross country this fall. We had, well over almost 950 athletes participate at our city championships, which was about 120 athletes more than we had the previous year. So I think
Wow.
the fact that, we were hosting OFSAA um, generated that excitement and people thought, hey, we might have a chance to participate. Let's make sure we get a team out for cross country. Um, so I think those are all things that sort of help generate interest. And that will have a lasting impact. Some of those athletes may just have ran cross country this year, but some of them may have discovered, hey, we really like this, and they'll stick around for next year. And if we do end up hosting other events, I know the Ottawa Lions Track and Field Club are hosting the National Track and Field Championships the next couple of summers. Some of those volunteers that volunteered at OFSAA Cross may look for volunteer opportunities in track and field in the future. And so it helps build the sport. You
Absolutely.
can't run the sport without the volunteers. As much
Yeah.
as the sport is for the athletes, you can't run it without the volunteers.
And 300 is an incredible number of volunteers. I know for other sports that's there's no, they wouldn't be able to come close to that number, but 300 is outstanding. Can you tell us about the Ottawa Lions Track and Field Club's youth program and how they support young athletes in the community?
Yeah, so I just coach one aspect of the Ottawa Lions Track and Field Club. I just coach the endurance, the junior development and aspire aged, so grades the high school aged athletes in endurance programs. So the club is much much bigger than what I do with the club. Um, but the Ottawa Lions Track and Field Club, it is the largest and most comprehensive track and field program, likely in the country. Um,
In the country, eh?
yeah, simply because we're so big, and
Wow.
the vast amount of experience that we've had um, coming through our ranks. We provide, learning, developmental, and competitive opportunities for thousands of children each and every year. And as we try to teach fundamental movement skills and provide competitive opportunities to allow young athletes to explore their options and develop skills. And, hopefully, they learn something from that and they're able to take it on. And as I mentioned before, track and field is not an entry level sport. Um, quite often it's the opposite. Athletes often come to track and field from other sports, like from soccer or from hockey, to improve their speed, their power or strength. I have a good friend of mine that used to play professional rugby, and he coached rugby at a very high level as well. And he had one of his coaching instructors tell him, if you want to see what we'll be doing for power and speed training in 5 years from now, go watch what the track and field athletes are doing now, because that's our game. Track and field is developing speed and power. And it's always only a matter of time until other sports catch up and say, hey, this is the new way to develop speed for soccer or for, power for hockey or whatever the sport may be. So athletes end up coming to track and field from, a host of other sports to improve their speed, power, and strength. And hey, if we can help them develop a love for our sport, that's wonderful. And if we can just help them become better at their sport, that's fine as well. I will admit, if I can use your show to make a small confession here.
Sure,
Um,
absolutely.
there was a cross country athlete that I watched win the OFSAA cross country championships in grade 9, and then she went on to just demolish everybody on the track the next year, um, in the spring. And then in the next year, she didn't show up for cross country, and I was like, why isn't she running cross country? And someone said, oh, her soccer coach won't let her. And I was
Uh,
like, what are you like? I was a little naive at the time, obviously, but I was also like kind of like, what could possibly be going on in November that's that important about soccer? And why won't they let her? Well, they're afraid she's going to get injured. I said, how could
wow.
what's the injury rate in high school cross country? It's pretty slim. That athlete ended up winning a gold medal in soccer. I was Jesse Fleming. So
Wow.
so obviously she made the right decision there. But it's she was a great soccer player, but she was also an outstanding standing cross country runner, and it was great to see. And I often joke that you know in terms of her athletic accomplishments, she's got the Olympic gold, and then right underneath that is the OFSAA title as well. So
That's
a lot
awesome.
of fun. You get
Uh,
you get to meet those athletes, right? What other sport would you meet an Olympic soccer player at other than soccer or track and field or cross country?
right. I'm curious to know. So you do coach there once a week at the Lions Club, and you mentioned it's the endurance pardon me, the endurance stream for. If you could just tell us a bit more as to what sort of drills, if you don't mind, you run your athletes through to enhance and build up their endurance.
Sure. Well, I coach twice a week with the Lions. Our group meets 3 times a week. We're fortunate to have. It wasn't always this way. When I first started, I was going 3 times a week, and there was just myself and another coach. But we've been slowly building up a group of coaches to work with the group. We've got 5 coaches working with our group right now, um, which is great. The athletes have several different people that could become potential role models for them or to help them to establish a connection with them. Essentially, what we're doing is, we teach the athletes how to do a proper warm up. So, the first 45 minutes of every session that we do is essentially warm up. We'll work on, we'll do a little bit of an aerobic session to start things off. And then we'll do all sorts of, technical drills. We'll add some strength, some activation drills, some mobility drills, um, all things that are designed to, one, prevent injury, and two, improve movement. Then each of one of our sessions has a workout, and sometimes the focus of the workout will be aerobic capacity training. Sometimes it will be, lactate threshold training. Sometimes it'll be, more more geared to race specific speed, for shorter distances on the track when we get to the track season. And then sometimes, this fall we spent almost every Saturday up in Gatineau Park, just going for a long run, like a long aerobic session on the hills in Gatineau Park,
Wow.
um, to build some strength. So there's a variety of different things that we try to do, mix things up a little bit.
Very cool. Last question for you. What are some of the most memorable moments or standout performances from this year's championships that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, well, for me, I think the highlight came in the final race of the day, where a local athlete, Daniel Kova from Louis Riel, he won the senior boys race. Um, Daniel ran a very well executed race. The last time the OFSAA championships were held here in Ottawa, One of my students from Glebe Collegiate, Yves Sikubwabo, he won the senior boys race. And so it's nice that when the provincial championships have come back to Ottawa, we've had another local athlete win the final race of the day. It's nice to see that tradition carry it on. And actually, Yves was able to come back and present the medals at the senior boys race. So he was presenting the race to a local athlete. We did have a couple other local athletes that performed well. Alexander Harris won a bronze medal in the novice girls race. And Daniel and his Louis Riel team won a bronze medal in the senior boys race. But Daniel's race was just outstanding the way he executed the race. He went pretty early. He used the downhill to his advantage. Right after a big long uphill where athletes tend to take a little bit of a breather going over the top of the hill. It's a great spot if you run over top of the hill and use the downhill to your performance. Daniel did that very, very well. Opened up, a pretty sizable gap fairly early in the race, and then it just became are they going to catch him? And it became pretty evident, going into the last kilometer that they let him get away and that there was no coming back. So it was exciting to see Daniel have such a great race in his last race as a cross country race as a high school athlete.
Right on, Kirk. Thank you very much for doing this interview. I think the results of the race are available on the website. I'm going to share the links with our audience if anyone's interested in finding out more. Are there any last words you'd like to share in regards to cross country in Ottawa or anything else?
Not that I could think of. I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank you for allowing me to highlight this event and the sport that I love so much.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate this. Has been I've learned a few things, and I'm probably going to do a follow-up with you down the road, or maybe one of your athletes and so on. But we appreciate it. Thank you very much, Kirk.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Ottawa and the future of sports. Catch our next episode as we continue to explore the sports events shaping our city and supporting our community. Until then, keep supporting local athletes.